Good morning and welcome back. Today, we're going to work with acrylic again. We're going to take an opportunity to test the kerf settings that I designed last week, and we're also going to be working with extruded acrylic. In fact, extruded mirrored acrylic. Today on Laser Nug. So for this signage today, I've got two pieces of mirrored acrylic. I have some black, and I'm going to use white to match the background on the logo. Because I'm going to be doing some pieces fully inlaid and some raised, I'm going to put a backer behind my white acrylic. So I've got a piece of 1/16 MDF. You folks know that I've been using a lot of acrylic over the last number of months. I make a lot of signs out of it. But one of the challenges I'm finding is that your acrylic sheets are never or virtually never the same thickness. Whether you're ordering 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch, 3 mil or 6 mil, etc., you can get a number of different colors or sheets from the same supplier. And when you get them home and you put your caliper on them, you'll notice that they're never exactly 3 millimeters, but there's also a big variance between one sheet and the other. One might measure 3.8 millimeters, the other one might be 2.9, next one is 3.4. And that's generally not a big issue, except when you're trying to do inlay work and you want it to be flush. So if, for example, in this case, my white base acrylic is thicker than my mirrored acrylic that I plan on fully inlaying, that means it's going to sit below that sight line. And that's not what I want. I wanted it flush. So we'll see how it turns out. But it's interesting, I have a number of different suppliers and I have the same issue or the same consistency or lack of consistency across all of them. And I think it's because each of these suppliers get their acrylic sheets from multiple different manufacturers. So I wanted to give you a quick overview of the sign project today and then take you into Lightburn just to mention a few notables. I am pretty excited because I'm working with some different mirrored acrylics now. This is what the logo is supposed to look like. So what I'd like to do is take these blue and red swishes and I want to fully inlay those against the white acrylic as a base or a background. And then I'm going to take my black acrylic and I'm going to raise these letters in the middle. So that's what our sign is supposed to look like. I created an oval so that I could encapsulate the whole thing as kind of the background or the backboard of the logo sign. That way I can engrave or cut out my pieces and I've got a consistent background. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my green oval. I'm going to cut that out of my MDF as a backer, and then I'm going to cut my white acrylic. I'm going to cut out spots here for the two swishes, the blue and the red, so that they fully are inlaid. And then I'm just going to do a light engrave across the area where the letters are going to be, so I have a template to place them in afterwards. So with that being said, let's get underway. We'll do the MDF first, then we'll do our white backer, and then we'll finish cutting out our pieces. Another couple of fun facts about using this mirrored acrylic. At least here from the 3 suppliers that I get my acrylic, none of them carry a mirrored acrylic that's a cast acrylic. They're all extruded. And I'm not sure if there is such a thing as a cast acrylic mirror. So it appears that whenever I order a mirror acrylic, it's always extruded. I prefer cast, but the interesting thing is if you're not sure whether your acrylic is extruded or cast, they have a very different weight. Taking the same size sheets, you can tell instantly when you pick up this mirrored acrylic that it weighs much lighter than this piece of cast. So with our MDF backing cut out, I'm going to work now on our white acrylic. So I definitely need my cut layer here on the outside circle, but I'm going to need to change those settings. So I'm going to highlight my line. I'm going to go into my library under acrylic, and I'm going to choose my cut settings for what is 1/8 acrylic, and I'm going to assign those. I have a black layer for farmer. I need that to be engraved. So I'm going to come to my black fill. I'm going to come down into my library under engraving acrylic, and I'm going to do a less white engrave. That'll give me just a shallow engrave, so I have pockets to put my letters into. and I'm going to sign that. I'm going to come back in, and I need to do a full cut on both of these swooshes, the red and the blue. I'm just going to ungroup this, and I'm going to change both of these to my cut layer, which I've colored green in this case. I'm going to group this together. It is grouped, and I just want to take a quick look on my playback. Yep, that's what I'm looking for. I'm going to say OK, and I have output on both my fill and my cut settings. I'm going to fill first and then do my cuts. Okay, all my settings are good. I'm highlighted, origin's in the right spot. I'm going to send that to the bolt. Let's run our job. While our job is running, I just wanted to point out an important note of safety. You're probably aware, as your laser operator or manufacturer's told you, as many folks on YouTube will tell you, you should never leave your laser unattended. And this job, for example, I think is about a 26-minute job for me. Coffee might need refreshing, you might want to run in and grab a glass of water, or some other reason you want to just run away quick. But this just happened to me a week and a half ago, and fortunately I was here for it. I accidentally toggled my air assist off on my cut layer, but fortunately I was here standing over it and keeping an eye on the laser. I was able to stop it in time. For those of you with a bolt, you'll notice here there's a stop button and you have a start and a pause button. Really nice thing about the bolt is if you need to stop your job for whatever reason and you push the square stop button, the job is over. In other words, you can't continue on. If you try to push start, it'll start all over again. However, if you just need to run out, grab a coffee, you can just hit your start button a second time and it will pause your job. And the nice thing about that is it pauses it and remembers exactly where it stopped. And when you come back in and you hit start again, it will just continue on like nothing happened. So we're in good shape. I've got my MDF backer. I have my white background with my shapes cut out and my letters engraved. We're going to just cut our letters out quickly, and then we're going to get to the fun part. So I have everything cut out except my mirrored acrylic inlays. So I'm going to grab only the red and I'm going to bring it out because I have the sizing. Since I'm cutting mirrored acrylic, I'm going to cut it from the back, which means I have to flip my design, and that way when I cut from the back it should come out the correct way. I'm also going to come over here and I'm going to open up my line setting. This gives me an opportunity to test the kerf that I determined last week and we used on that cherry wood inlay. I want to see if it's actually still just as good. So we're going to try it here with acrylic, especially on these tiny, tiny tight ends of these little swooshes. So if you recall, outside kerf of 0.005 outward. So I've added the kerf to these cutouts. I've got high air, I have my proper line settings, I'm going to press OK, and now I need to flip this piece. So I'm going to come up here to these triangles and I'm going to flip it. And now we'll send it to the bolt. We'll see if the kerf works and the cutout. So at the bolt, I have my red mirrored acrylic. I'm going to flip it over, cut from the back. Autofocus, set our origin, frame it, and we'll start the job. Wow, that is a nice tight fit. So that 0.005 kerf adjustment works great. Let's do the same thing with the blue. I understand that it's not a good idea to laser it or to cut it or engrave it with the mirror facing up towards the laser itself. You want to always face it down, reverse your image, and cut from the back. I believe it's important because the mirror will reflect the laser beam. That's all our pieces. I'm going to squeeze this in to test the fit, and then we'll start putting our sign together. Beautiful. Okay, it's time to peel it and reveal it. So there's our finished product. Overall, I'm really happy with it. But I also wanted to test a few things on this project like I often do, especially when you're trying to learn to use different or new types of materials. Let's talk about what I learned on this project. So first off, my kerf settings worked out great. 0.005 seems to be the correct kerf outward setting for using the 1.5 lens. Worked excellent for these mirrored acrylic pieces that sat in flush. Nice tight finish. Second thing, this mirrored acrylic is extruded acrylic. It's not cast acrylic. I don't have settings for extruded, so I just used my regular cast acrylic settings, and they're not good enough. So if I am going to continue to use the mirrored acrylic or an extruded acrylic product, I'm going to have to spend some time and narrow down on some really good solid settings for the bolt. The next thing I learned is not to use Weld On number 4 with this mirrored acrylic. If I focus you in, you can see what appears to be like a stippling effect throughout this section of the blue mirror. That's what happened after I applied Weld On number 4 to this seam. It usually works great with everything else I've used it with, but it appears what happens is the Weld On seeps down, gets in underneath this clear acrylic layer, and more or less kind of attacks the backing or the mirrored backing on this piece of acrylic. Although I can't sell this piece now, it's a great prototype and a lot of good learnings so that I can make sure that next time I work with it, I'll just glue that type of mirrored acrylic from the back and not attempt to try to use the Weld On. So hey, that's a wrap. Thanks a lot for sticking around today. I hope you found it interesting or informative to some degree. Have a great week with your families. Please be kind to one another, and I'll see you again right here. I'm Gord Potter, and you've been watching LaserNut. Cheers.